Hello, this is Nigel Maynard, editor-in-chief of Drugstore News. Back to our ongoing discussion where we talk to thought leaders in the retail pharmacy space. Today we have a special guest. It's Dan Mack of Mack Elevations, who's been around retail pharmacy and suppliers within the industry for a long time. And Dan is here to talk about his new book, Look Closer, Ideas on Re-examining and Eliminating Personal, Relational, and Organizational Blind Spots. Dan, thanks for joining us today.
Nigel, thank you once again for all the support on this project. I appreciate it.
So tell us a little bit about the book.
Well, the book is about 10 years of curation of ideas and about 5 years of writing. And it's a combination of about 200 events that I facilitated over the last 10 to 14 years, bringing retailers and manufacturers together. And it's a combination of some of, I think, the best thinking that have come out of these meetings and some of the research I've done around personal blind spots, interpersonal or relational blind spots. And when you're in an organization, in a team, or amongst peers, the blind spots that occur in that dynamic also. It also is a project that I certainly have never done this project alone. I want to thank the Elevation Forum partners who've been really deeply involved with this for a lot of years, the 45 key companies that are involved in that community. And I also want to especially just thank 7 organizations that have really come along close on the ride with me recently, helping with the project. And that includes Global Overview, the Emerson Group, Compliant Pharmacy Alliance, Simply Good Foods, Traditional Medicinals, Nordic Naturals, and Bausch & Lomb.
So the title of the book is Look Closer. And so I guess it's right there in the title. But the second part of it, ideas on re-examining and eliminating personal, relational, and organizational blind spots. Tell us a little bit about, in general, why are these blind spots harmful to retailers as well as suppliers?
Well, I think they're hidden, which is why it's a blind spot. And you don't take as seriously how much it damages a relationship or damages your effectiveness or damages even the level of trust you have with other people. 1 in 10 people think they're extremely self-aware. And it's, I'm not actually 8 in 10. It's closer to 1 in 10. So, I mean, this gap between how we see ourselves and how we show up is pretty significant. And that's why I think this is something for everybody. And I mean, I practice this daily. Every one of the 55 mini chapters in here in this book really are a lesson for me to remind myself every day. It's about, I think the point is, are you comfortable with critique? Are you comfortable looking in the mirror? Are you comfortable with people giving you feedback? And you're comfortable kind of getting to the overall truth of how you show up, because it does affect how you relate.
Okay, so there are 55 chapters, but essentially it's broken up into more or less 3 main sections.
Yeah.
And one of those has to do with supplier and retailer. So for our first question, what do you think is the biggest blind spot that hinders the supplier-partner relationship?
Well, I'll tell you what customers, retailers say is valuable in a partnership first. And I've been asking this question for a decade. And I've been very encouraged always what I uncover, because it's very consistent. They're looking for idea companies, and not many companies are truly idea companies. There's a lot of redundancy and repetitiveness and SKUs and items and introductions that aren't that interesting. And there's a few that are, and those are idea companies. They're looking for transformational thinking. That's hard to find. They're looking for people that help them uncover, help the retailer uncover challenges in their business that maybe they're too close to see. Or they're looking for what's around the corner, what's next, what's going on globally that's not here in the United States yet. They're looking for companies that bring real predictive analytics to again, assess what is the future. And I think the best partnerships retailers are looking for, not product discussions, but capability discussions or hidden asset discussions. How can we better use what you have, assets in the company that are hidden in the back room that we're not utilizing, how do we use them more effectively? So that's why, I mean, that's what they're looking for. And I think the blind spot is we stay very transactional too often around items and even products. We don't get into these bigger ideas. And there are behaviors that I think the winning behaviors that go into a partnership, they're behaviors that a lot of companies don't practice well because they're not easy. Behaviors such as when you see conflict in your relationship with a customer, instead of avoiding running into the conflict, run into the fire and address it immediately. That's a really unique behavior. Like most people wait too long when there's a problem. The second would be the idea that every time you have a meeting with somebody, it's a moment to co-develop together. It's not talking at, it's co-creation. And I think that's a blind spot. Companies just often talk too much versus being skilled at the question. Or they bring a lot of redundant information versus finding a truly uncommon insight that may unlock a lot of new value, or it may relate to their core customer. So those are some of the key things that jump out in terms of why partnerships can break down, and both parties sometimes don't connect because manufacturers aren't tapping into these needs that the retailer is stating that they're looking for.
Yeah. Now, in one of our future questions, we're going to talk about how an organization can deal with blind spots. But one thing that occurs to me in this first question is, you mentioned that most companies are big. It's hard to just pivot. Is it helpful if, let's say, someone who's head of a department somewhat starts to implement some of these strategies that you're talking about? Would that be enough to affect how an organization deals with its suppliers? Let's say a retailer deal with suppliers.
Yeah, it's a great question, Nigel. The higher up in an organization that you're supporting these unique behaviors, this mindset, the more it will trickle down. So I think when you give things lip service on more of like a mid-level part of the organization, and if it's not going to the highest level, it does break down because it's truly symbolically not that important to the senior people. So I do, when I see companies that live these behaviors at a higher level, it starts at the very top and they celebrate it, they practice it, they discuss it. It's part of the culture. It's not to say they do it perfectly, because they don't, but there's a lot of practice, a lot of deliberate practice to really bring these things to life. So it does have to go higher up, but it can start at a mid-level for sure.